Yo, peace to the 12. I really don't know what I'm going to title this video. It's basically going to be a part 2 to my last video that I did, touching on the Ethiopians, the ancient Ethiopians of Asia. This is just the part 2 of this, so I'll just title it, This Guy Said Ethiopians Were in Asia, or something. Something to that effect when the video comes out. But yeah, basically, we're just going to do a part 2 to that. I'm going to add more information. And this video is actually inspired by a comment I saw that a brother posted on my last video, which was it was this brother Autobot Jazzman, right? And he says other historians said the Middle East was called Ethiopia. I responded, yeah, I know. Godfrey Higgin was one of those historians. He stated that there were two Ethiopias and one is now called Arabia. Then he said, I didn't include the other part, but basically he was saying, he said E.A. Wallis Budge. I said, interesting. Do you know what his book was called so I could check it out? And he said, History of Ethiopia, Nubia, and Abyssinia. So here we go. Shout out to that brother. I went, looked it up, and we got the information. So this is a guy by the name of E.A. Wallis Budge. He was an Egyptologist, Orientalist, and a philologist who worked for the British Museum and published numerous works on the ancient Near East. He was born in the 1800s. Born in 1857. We're going to be taking a look at his book, A History of Ethiopia, Nubia, and Abyssinia, according to the hieroglyphic inscriptions of Egypt and Nubia in the Ethiopia Chronicle by Sir E.A. Wallis Budge in 2 volumes. We're going to be looking at volume 1. All right, we're going to go to the preface, or the preface. It's going to be 7, I believe, right? It's V7. VII, that's 7. I think. Yeah, because X is 10. Anyway, it says, it seems certain that classical historians and geographers call the whole region from India to Egypt, both countries inclusive, by the name of Ethiopia. And in consequence, they regarded all the dark-skinned and black peoples who inhabited it as Ethiopians. So he said from India to Egypt, they were considered Ethiopians, right? And then he talks about dark-skinned and black peoples, right? And those regions were known as Ethiopia. Then we go down to here. This is just a little thing I wanted to add. It just says, every king of Abyssinia from the time of Tasfa, Yakuno, Amlak, 1270 to 1285 until today, has been proud to adopt his chief title, Negus, Nagast, Za, Ethiopia, king of the kings of Ethiopia. I just wanted to add that. That's really not relevant to the video, but I thought that was interesting. But nonetheless, he said from India to Egypt. Well, India is in what? India is part of South Asia, right? Both countries. We know Egypt, that's what they call North Africa. By the name Ethiopian, and consequently, they regard all dark-skinned and black peoples who inhabited it as Ethiopians, right? And for those of you that don't know, Ethiopians occupied what you now know as the Middle East, which, by the way, the Middle East is a super new term. Came out in the 1900s. But let's prove that the Ethiopians had predominance in the continent of Asia. All right, specifically the Middle East. So we go to the Bible, which is what I always go to. We go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 8 through 12. It says, and Kush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, right? Kush begat means he fathered, meaning he had a son. Kush, for those of you that don't know, is the father of the Ethiopians. Nimrod is the son of Kush. And Kush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord yahawah. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord yahawah, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and built Nineveh in the city, Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, and the same is a great city. Right? So he was found in all these cities. Who did this? Nimrod. It says Babel, Shinar, Akkad, all these places. Well, these are places that are in what you would call Asia. All right? Let's just prove what I said. Kush. Kush means black. Father of the Ethiopians. Known as the Kushites. And it says Nimrod was a great Kushite chief. Meaning he was a great Ethiopian king. He conquered the Akkadians, a Turanian race already settled in Mesopotamia, and founded his kingdom. The Kushites mingled with the Akkads and so formed the Chaldean nation. So, It says Nimrod settled in Mesopotamia. Where is Mesopotamia located? It's in the region of Iraq, right? It's in the region of Iraq, which is a region of West Asia, Western Asia, right? Mesopotamia, all right? Not only was Mesopotamia one of the first places to develop agriculture, it was also at crossroads of the Egyptian and Indus Valley civilizations. This made it a melting pot of languages, cultures that stimulated a lasting impact on writing, technology, language, trade, religion, and law. All right, and Mesopotamia is the earliest urban literate civilization on the globe, right? So mind you, it was settled in and founded by who? Nimrod, the Kushite chief, right? So that tells you there that an Ethiopian is the one who settled and industrialized the Western Asia. All right, I went into this in even more detail in my last video. I'll include that in a minute. All right, actually, I include it right here. So in my last video, we talked about this guy's book, a guy by the name of Francois Lenormant. He was a French archaeologist, right? He was also born in 1800. He was born in 1837. And he wrote a book that was titled A Manual of the Ancient History of the East to the Commencement of the Median Wars, Francois Lenormant, right? Page 58. I'm going to read it again. So it says, according to the book of Genesis, Ham had 4 sons, Kush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. The identity of the race of Kush with the Ethiopians is certain, right? So Kush goes back to the Ethiopians. So we go down to here. It says, it seems certain that the Hamitic race inhabited at first a great part of Western and Southern Asia, right? Before the arrival of the children of Shem, who drove them out from thence. Nimrod, a descendant of Kush, reigned in Babylon, built Erech and Calneh in the land of Shinar, and established there the first of all empires. So the first empire after the flood, right? So post-Diluvian, the first empire after the flood was founded by an Ethiopian, Kush, or was founded by Nimrod, who was the son of Kush, the father of the Ethiopians, right? First of all empires. The Hamites were the first inhabitants of the country, bordered by the Oxus extending towards the upper course of the Indus, which has derived the name Hindu Kush, always given to the mountain chain of this region. All scholars are now agreed that the banks of the Tigris, southern Persia, and part of India itself, where the tribes of this race were called Kasakas, were peopled by the Kushite family. So the Kushites populated the regions of the Tigris, southern Persia, which would be modern-day Iran, and part of India itself. All right? They were peopled by the Kushite family. All right? Like I told you guys in my last video, just because you see a demographic of people living in the area today, that does not mean they're the original inhabitants. All you got to do is look at America. Anybody with a brain knows that the so-called white man was not originally in America, yet here he is. Same goes for Australia. Same goes for New Zealand. The list goes on, right? So just because somebody lives somewhere today doesn't mean they're the original inhabitants. You have to keep that in mind. And the reason I do these videos, I said this in the last video. The reason I do this video, I am not an Ethiopian. I am not a Kushite. The reason I'm mentioning this is because so-called black people have not been taught the fact that they have way more accomplishments that they'll ever get credit for. And I don't expect these people to give you credit for. I expect you brothers to look it up, do the research, and watch different videos that brothers put out highlighting this fact. I don't expect my enemies to throw me a bone. All right? But that's why I do these videos, because so-called black people need to see these things, right? And stop always seeing damn what do you call it? Damn slave movies, right? And damn Snow and Power and all this madness, right? But nonetheless, continuing on. That was a little rant. Before being occupied by the descendants of Shem and by the Aryans of the race of Japheth. That's what he thinks. I really think he's talking about Edomites, but I have to do more research on that. Anyway, there are also good reasons for believing that the Carians, the original inhabitants of the great part of Asia Minor, were the race of Ham. And lastly, the same exercise in earlier times in the uncontested sovereignty on the coast of Carmania and Gedrosia along the Indian Ocean over all the south of the Arabian Peninsula, right? And like I said, I'm not going to go too in depth on that. You brothers just go watch this video. I did a 50-minute video talking about this. It's called This Man Wrote About Africans That Ruled the World. Just go watch this video. It was 3 days ago. It'll be 4 days ago now because I had this slide a day ago. Just go watch it. It's literally the video right before this one. All right, I went into detail on this book in particular. So anyway, we're going to go back to the book that I started with. A History of Ethiopia, Nubia, and Abyssinia. Now we're going to be on page 8, I believe, of the preface at least. So it says, during the preparation of this work, I have been driven to the conclusion that the Ethiopians, whose manners and customs have been so fully described by Herodotus, Diodorus, Strabo, Pliny, and others, were not Abyssinians at all, but the natives of Upper Nubia and the islands of Meroe, and the Negroes and Negroid peoples who inhabited the hot, moist lands which extend from the southern Abyssinian to the equator. So he's alleging that they weren't even Abyssinians, they were just Negroes and Negroid peoples in Upper Nubia and the island of Meroe. That's what he's saying. Go down to here. We're going to go to page 1 of History of Ethiopia and Nubia. It says, from these various statements, we may conclude that Homer and Herodotus call all the peoples of the Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, and Western Asia, and India, Ethiopians, and that Strabo and Pliny restrict the use of that term to the peoples who lived in the northern and southern parts of the valley of the Nile. So, he said Homer and Herodotus. Herodotus, for those you don't know, he was a Greek historian. They coined him the father of history, right? And Homer, well, actually, let me just pull these up for you, brothers, actually. Because, I mean, why not, right? I'll pull both of them up. Give me 1 second. Bear with me 1 second. But, depends on how slow my computer is. We might not get to it. We might not. Depends. It looking like my computer's moving extra slow. All right, here we go. Homer. I believe Homer was a philosopher, right? He might have been a historian too, though. I really don't know. I never really read much of Homer's works. I've read Herodotus. I've read Pliny. I've read what's the damn dude's name? Tacitus. I never really read much of Homer's stuff. Yeah, he was an ancient Greek poet. You know, it just popped up, but it's taking forever. Of course. But I'll go ahead. While it's loading, I'll read this other part. So let me read that again. From these various statements, we may conclude that Homer and Herodotus call all the peoples of the Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, and Western Asia and India Ethiopians. So they all had the title Ethiopians. And that Strabo and Pliny restrict the use of that term to the peoples who lived in the northern and southern parts of the Valley of the Nile. So Homer and Herodotus called Sudanese people Egyptians, Arabians, Palestinians, and Western Asians, and Indians Ethiopians. Meaning what? They all looked similar to each other. Right? That's why I said in the video I did on Bill Maher, when I said, you know, you have a lot of people that say, oh, you know, these Israelis, they're in the land of Palestine and this and that. Like, in reality, the real region of Palestine was originally inhabited by Hamites, all right, so-called dark-skinned Africans, right? That's originally who inhabited that place. So really, neither one of them are native to that region. They both moved up in there, all right. And that's what. And this guy is basically corroborating that statement I made, because he says Palestine during the time of Homer and Herodotus, they were called Ethiopians, right? They were called Ethiopians. So I just wanted to add that fact. So really, both of them is trespassing. All right. Now we know ultimately that landmass belongs to the children of Israel. All right, the real ones. You know, but that's a whole nother video. Dang, man, it don't want to load on me. The Homer thing. You know, but you brothers can look it up. You brothers can look up Homer and Herodotus. Anyway, we're gonna move on. Oh, actually, hold on. I didn't see the yellow part. And we're down here. He says, and this is page 2. History of Ethiopia and Nubia. He says, and there is no doubt that the earliest classical writers considered to be Ethiopians all the peoples who were swarthy or brown skinned or black skinned, including the Negroes, and the country in which they live, whether the Sudan or Western Asia or India, to be Ethiopia. Right? So if you lived in India, if you lived in Western Asia, if you lived in Sudan, they all called them Ethiopians. That's what he's saying. Right? So let's continue on to page 66. Continue on to page 66. All right, actually loaded. So Homer loaded up. Homer loaded up. One second. Oh, a lot of you brothers already know who this is anyway, but I'll just get it anyway, right? I'll just get it anyway. Right? So it says Homer, ancient Greek poet who is credited as the author of Iliad and the Odyssey. I've never read either one of them. Two epic poems that are foundational works of ancient Greece. Right? He's considered one of the most revered and influential authors in history. Right? Let's see what let's look up what's the other guy? Herodotus. Right? Like I said, they call him the father of history. I did a book on here. I did a video on Herodotus years ago. Herodotus, he's a historian and geographer. And by the way, he used to call all of known Africa to him. He used to call that place Libya. All right, he had a map that he made, and the map was the map of Africa. He just called it Libya. Just wanted to bring that up as well. So we go to the scriptures in the New Testament. It talks about the Libyans. It's really talking about that region of North Africa in general. But nonetheless, he says Herodotus was a historian and geographer, Greek historian and geographer from the Greek city under Persian control in the 5th century BCE. Right? They call him the father of history, all that. You guys can look this dude up. All right. By the way, he also said the ancient Egyptians were black with woolly hair, because they were. But I already did a video on that. And it's funny too, you have a lot of these damn modern video makers and modern quote unquote historians, right? They'll turn around and say, "Oh no, he didn't mean they were black with woolly hair. He meant they were just brown skinned with woolly hair and all that." No. If you do an actual comparative translation, right, of Greek, the word there is black. All right, I did a video on it. All right, in his original writings, you translate that word for word, the word is black. But anyway, let's see where we're at. 17 minutes in. All right, let's go. I only got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more slides. So anyway, page 3. He says, this is the same book. He says, but in spite of all this exact knowledge about the situation of the land of the burnt faces, the name given to it by the Greeks became general, and although we do not include India in Ethiopia, many post-Christian writers did. And many medieval and modern writers make it include Abyssinia and use Ethiopian and Abyssinian as synonymous terms. He goes back to here, talks about how Ethiopia meant the country of migration. And then it says practice Ge'ez means Abyssinia, the land to which the burnt faces migrated from Arabia, the Abyssinian himself, in his language. So he's letting you know that Abyssinians, and Abyssinia is just another word for Ethiopian, they migrated from Arabia to Ethiopia, modern Ethiopia at least, which would be in East Africa. Did I not include that the first time? I guess not. We just read this, I think, right? Maybe not. Anyway, page 66. It says, the information about Ethiopia supplied by Diodorus may be thus summarized. The Ethiopians say that they were the first men in the world. I'm going to do a video on this too. The Ethiopians say that they were the first men in the world, and they may be regarded as autochthones. They were the first to establish religious worship and to make offerings to the gods. Now, speaking on that, I mentioned this in the last video. They are the creators of these pagan religions, right? Like I said before, a lot of these mythological figures that you hear about, they're actually based on people who actually existed, and it's usually based on Kush and his son Nimrod, right? And also Semiramis, right? So a lot of the father of these pagan religions are the Ethiopians. I mentioned that before, right? A lot of these philosophies and all that goes straight back to Nimrod, right? But that'll be a video when I do a video on Nimrod, you know. And I'm not, a lot of brothers keep telling me to do it. You know, I got to get a lot of information for that to do it. But anyway, they were the first to establish religious worship and to make offerings to the gods. The Egyptians were settlers. Now check this out. This is according to Diodorus. He says the Egyptians were settlers from Ethiopia, and Egypt itself is a land built by the slime and mud which the Nile brought down from Ethiopia. Most of the Egyptian laws are of Ethiopian origin and Egyptian customs. The deification of kings and funerary ceremonies were derived from Ethiopia. So he's telling you right there that the Egyptians were just settlers from Ethiopia. Meaning what? The Egyptians were just as black as an Ethiopian was, right? Like they try to differentiate them now. No. Like I tell you all the time, the Arab man started his conquest in Egypt in 640 AD. You guys can look that up, right? Anyway, but there are other Ethiopians, some on the east and west banks of the Nile, some of the islands, and some live near Arabia, and some in the heart of Africa. The greater number of these, especially the riverine folks, are blacks with flat faces and curly hair. They are very fierce and cruel, have the manners of the beast, and skillfully devise wickedness. So this is what he said. The Ethiopians on the west banks of the Nile, near Arabia, right? They're black. And then he dissed them. They were saying, oh, they grimy. You know, they grimy. They do this to you. They're beasts. They devise wickedness. Right? And this is Diodorus. Diodorus was an ancient Greek historian. Right? Author of the Library of History, a universal or world history, 40 books from the age of the myths. Right? Born between 60 and 30 BC. Right? Let's get one more page. And then, you know, that'll be the video. Page 120 of the same book. He says, the descriptions of Ethiopia given by Homer, Herodotus, Diodorus, Strabo, Pliny, make it quite clear that they indicated by this name the vast tracts of country in Asia and Africa that were inhabited by dark-skinned and black-faced peoples. So Homer, Herodotus, Diodorus, Strabo, and Pliny make it clear, right, that Asia and Africa were inhabited by dark-skinned and black people, period. They divided into two groups, Eastern Ethiopians and Western Ethiopians. The former lived in Arabia, Syria, Mesopotamia, and India. So mind you this, right? Arabia, Syria, Mesopotamia, and India had black-faced peoples, right? The latter in the regions of west of the Red Sea, Egypt, and the Sudan. Right? So those are the two Ethiopians I told the brother in the comment section. Yeah, here, Godfrey Higgins said there were two different Ethiopias. Right? Both populated by black-faced peoples. But we go down to here. He says, the Aksumites preferred to call their country Ethiopia and not Habish, for to them Ethiopia and Kush, and the Kushites had, after their conquest of the Negro tribes. So you had a war between the Kushites and the Negro. Made themselves master of the greater part of north or east Egypt, which perhaps the exception of Egypt. The name of Habish is derived from the Semitic tribe called Habashat. So this is telling me that most likely you had Israelites that were over there, the Negro tribes. They were over there, and they went to war with the Kushites, and they ultimately ended up losing. That's why the Kushites refused to call the land Habish. They called it Ethiopia, right? Which was one of the most important Semitic tribes and crossed the Red Sea from South Arabia and settled in Africa. So he's saying that the Habish came from Arabia. They settled in Africa, right? Ronani has shown that the original home of Hashbat was Yemen in western Southern Arabia near the coast of the Red Sea. But the Habashat were foreigners and appear to have been regarded with no great favor by the native population, though they brought with them a civilization which was superior to their own. So the Habashat, or the Habish people, they were not regarded with great favor, yeah, because they don't like us. nothing new, right? They didn't like the Negroes then, they don't like us now. But nonetheless, Habesha today, they talk about the Ethiopian Jews, right? So that's what I mentioned. If you Google Habesha today, it's talking about Ethiopian Jews, Semitic people. So, yeah, man, like I said, this ain't going to be a long video. That's pretty much that, man. This guy said Ethiopians were in Asia, and they were. And a lot of old people of ancient times said that. So, anyway, man, hopefully that was an edifying lesson. With that, I say again, peace to the 12. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High, Yahawah, In the name of the begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who the world commonly calls God. Yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who the world calls Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace. People listen and learn. Your brothers in this work, true sincerity, and your elders before me. Go in peace.